Desde la Universidad Militar Nueva Granada, en Bogotá, Colombia, transmite UMNG Radio. UMNG Radio. Una emisora alternativa, cultural e independiente. Desde la Universidad Militar Nueva Granada. Esta es UMNG Radio.
La tierra nos habla en colores, en texturas, en vida. Cada trazo es un puente entre nuestra esencia y el mundo que habitamos. La Universidad Militar Nueva Granada te invita a expresar tu compromiso con el medio ambiente y los derechos humanos a través del arte. Participa en el concurso de pintura Raíces. Trazos por la tierra y la vida. Óleo, acuarela, acrílico y más. Con premios de hasta 3 millones de pesos. Inscribe tu obra del 12 al 31 de agosto. Deja que tu arte inspire un mundo más compasivo, solidario y comprometido con la vida. Lo que ocurre en la universidad, los acontecimientos y sus protagonistas están en UMNG Radio.
Tune in. Learn something interesting whilst having fun. Tune in and speak up. Hello, English learners. Want to learn something interesting whilst having fun? Welcome to Tune In and Speak Up, the podcast where you'll get to know this beautiful language in depth. Each week, we'll dive into exciting topics, share practical tips, and tell you fascinating English language stories. So whether you're studying, going to work, or just relaxing, connect, listen, and let's make English part of your world. Wherever you are, whenever you want, just hit play, tune in and listen up. Tune in to UMNG Radio every Tuesday from 11 a.m. till noon. Don't just learn English, live it.
Lo que ocurre en la universidad, los acontecimientos y sus protagonistas están en UMNG Radio.
Okay, here we are. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Tune In and Speak Up, the podcast from Universidad Militar Nueva Granada, where we explore curious stories, surprising facts, and cultural insights from around the world, all through the lens of learning English. I'm Jorge Bermúdez, teacher of English at the Department of Multicultural Studies at UMNG, part of the School of Education and Humanities. I'll be your guide through some of the most unusual and thought-provoking topics, from ethogeology to forgotten inventions and strange scientific discoveries. Whether you're learning English as a second language or just love learning something new, this podcast is for you. Ready to improve your listening skills, expand your vocabulary, and engage in meaningful conversations? Then grab your headphones, tune in, and let's speak up. Throughout history, humans have looked to animals for signs of imminent danger, whether it be flocks of birds suddenly fleeing before a storm, cats and dogs displaying intensified agitation when thunder is near, or dogs reacting to scents and vibrations that human senses cannot detect. Among all these associations, one claim has stood out and persisted for millennia: the belief that animals can predict earthquakes. This notion has captured the imagination of cultures around the world, from ancient China and Greece to modern Japan and South America, where people continue to report strange animal behavior shortly before seismic activity. So here we have unusual behavior: flocks of birds, cats, dogs, snakes, and even elephants that behave in strange ways. Okay, let's begin with some definitions. This fascinating idea is often referred to as ethogeology, a term that combines ethology, as we can see in the slide, the study of animal behavior, with geology, the study of the Earth's processes. The concept suggests that certain species might be capable of detecting delicate environmental signals long before humans are aware of them. These signals could include vibrations too weak for human perception, changes in electromagnetic fields, or even changes in groundwater chemistry. As a result, animals may exhibit restless, fearful, or even migratory behavior hours, or sometimes days, before an earthquake strikes. Accounts of such behavior are remarkably widespread. Ancient records describe snakes abandoning their burrows, that is, the place where these animals live, in midwinter before devastating tremors. Farmers in Italy and Japan have told stories of cows refusing to enter barns just before earthquakes. Even in recent decades, scientists and residents alike have noticed patterns: dogs barking incessantly, birds flying erratically, and fish jumping out of the water in apparent panic. These observations have fueled both cultural traditions and scientific speculation. Yet, despite the abundance of anecdotes, the scientific consensus remains cautious and often skeptical. The question remains: are these animal reactions truly connected to underground geological processes, or are they coincidences magnified by human perception and memory? Because humans are prone to noticing unusual behavior after a disaster occurs, memory bias, or the prejudice created by memory, may shape the narrative. Since unusual events are more likely to be remembered in retrospection, many claims risk becoming self-reinforcing stories rather than reliable evidence. Therefore, researchers continue to investigate carefully, balancing open-minded curiosity with rigorous scientific methods. In this episode, we investigate into the story of these anecdotes, examining accounts from ancient civilizations through to modern-day field reports. We also explore scientific investigations that attempt to identify measurable signals, such as low-frequency vibrations or chemical releases, that could plausibly explain animal sensitivity. Finally, we look at emerging technological efforts, including sensor networks and AI systems, designed to capture environmental changes that might parallel what animals seem to detect. Okay, let's talk about today's vocabulary. By applying cause-effect reasoning, using connectors like because, since, therefore, and as a result, we aim to structure our investigation and consider evidence systematically. Are animals truly capable of detecting precursors to earthquakes because of their heightened senses? Or is the belief itself a result of cultural storytelling and selective memory? Since the risks of earthquake predictions are immense, this exploration matters not only for science but also for public safety, and our understanding of the natural world. Therefore, as we proceed, we will consider whether ethogeology represents a genuine biological and geological connection, or whether it remains at heart a compelling but unfounded belief rooted in centuries of observation and folklore. Okay, let's go to the first segment in our program. The next one later. The next one. Yeah, there you go. Defining ethogeology. The term ethogeology is not commonly found in mainstream scientific literature, nor does it appear in established geological or ethological textbooks. Instead, it seems to have been popularized and perhaps even coined or invented by commentators such as Joe Kissel of Interesting Thing of the Day. His article, Ethogeology, that we see in the slide, first published in 2007 and later revised, introduced the concept in a way that made it accessible to general audiences, blending scientific possibility with cultural curiosity. Unlike terms solidly grounded in decades of peer-reviewed studies, ethogeology occupies a gray area. It is more a framework for speculation than a formally recognized discipline. At its core, ethogeology proposes that animals, because of their evolved sensory capabilities, may detect environmental precursors to seismic activity. These precursors could include phenomena far too subtle for humans to perceive directly. For example, certain species are known to sense low-frequency vibrations that travel through the ground before human instruments register them. Others may be sensitive to electromagnetic field fluctuations, chemical changes in groundwater, or even air ionization caused by stress in rocks before an earthquake. Because these biological sensors are the product of millions of years of evolutions, animals may respond instinctively to signals that our technologies struggle to measure. In theory, if such responses could be systematically correlated with seismic events, animals could become part of a natural early warning system, an intriguing complement to modern seismology. However, the potential cause-effect chain between geological processes and animal behavior is exceedingly complex. Because animals are finely tuned to stimuli beyond human perception, changes in their activity might indeed result from approaching seismic events. At the same time, the very same behaviors, such as agitation, migration, or vocalization, could be triggered by far more mundane influences: sudden weather changes, the presence of predators, unusual human activity, or even changes in barometric pressure. Therefore, while the logic of animals sense what humans cannot is attractive, proving it under scientific scrutiny remains challenging. Okay, let's talk about the history of these perceptions. Historical anecdotes provide some of the earliest evidence fueling this belief. The most famous ancient account dates to the year 373 before the Common Era. That's before what we call before Christ. In Greece, when rats, weasels, snakes, and centipedes, as we see in the picture, rats, weasels, centipedes, and snakes reportedly fled the city of Hellas just days before it was destroyed by a devastating earthquake. This story, preserved in classical writings, became a touchstone for later speculation about animal premonition of seismic events. Let's go to 1891 Japan. Centuries later, in 1891 Japan, witnesses reported that chickens refused to roost in the hours leading up to the Novi earthquake, while other animals displayed nervous or erratic behavior. Such reports often gain cultural significance, shaping local beliefs about the relationship between animals and natural disasters. Here we have some engravings of the time of the disaster caused by the Novi earthquake. In the 20th century, similar claims multiplied. In 1966 China, for instance, villagers reported that dogs deserted their kennels, that is, the places where they live, shortly before a powerful quake struck a nearby town. Perhaps the most famous case came less than a decade later, the 1975 Heicheng earthquake in Liaoning province. In this instance, unusual reptile activity, particularly snakes and rats emerging from their burrows, remember that's the place where they hibernate, in the middle of winter, was said to have influenced the decision to evacuate the city. Remarkably, tens of thousands of lives were saved, and the event became widely cited as proof that animal behavior might be a reliable warning system. Yet, skeptics argue that the evacuation decision was also based on foreshocks and geological indicators. The foreshocks are the little tremors before an earthquake that may be detected by some humans, and that attributing success primarily to animals may exaggerate their role. Even in more recent times, the theme persists. Prior to the 2009 L'Aquila earthquake in Italy, residents described restless dogs, erratic livestock movements, and even changes in bird flight patterns. Researchers at the Max Planck Institute later collected and analyzed some of these observations, highlighting the potential, but still unproven, connection between seismic precursors and animal behavior. Popular media has also circulated footage of animals behaving strangely in the hours before earthquakes, reinforcing the public impression that such links exist. We're going to watch a short video that indicates this is particularly from the 1975 earthquake in China that shows the unusual behavior of some animals. Here we go.
For months, the Chinese monitored the environment. They noticed odd phenomena like snakes coming out of hibernation and other strange animal behavior as depicted in this government film. But more significant was a series of foreshocks that happened just before the earthquake struck. On February 4th, 1975, a strong temblor hit Haicheng. The city was completely shattered, but relatively few lives were lost. Because experts had predicted the earthquake, the people were warned hours in advance. 1 year later, residents of another city, Tangshan, would not be as lucky.
Lo que ocurre en la universidad, los acontecimientos y sus protagonistas están en UMNG Radio.
Okay. So in that video, we saw how the snakes were abandoning their burrows in the middle of winter, which was considered very strange because they were supposed to be hibernating, pigs jumping out of their places, right? Acting strangely. Together, these anecdotes anecdotes suggest that animals may indeed perceive delicate signals before humans become aware of imminent earthquakes. However, a persistent problem remains. Observers often record such behavior only in retrospect, after a quake has already occurred. This raises the problem of retrospective bias. Remember, that's prejudice. Because people are more likely to notice and remember unusual animal behavior after a disaster, they may unconsciously connect events that are not causally related. In other words, the narrative often takes the form because environmental conditions changed subtly, therefore animals behaved in unusual ways. As a result, humans interpreted these behaviors as warning signs. Remember, after the event. But without systematic prospective documentation, such claims risk being colored by retrospection. What appears to be predictive ability may simply be the human tendency to link striking memories with major events. Thus, while the idea of ethogeology is persuasive, establishing a clear and reliable cause-effect relationship between seismic precursors and animal responses remains one of its greatest scientific challenges. Okay, let's move on to segment 2, interpreting cause and effect in ethogeology. When attempting to interpret ethogeology, one of the central challenges is clarifying the cause-effect relationship between environmental precursors and observable animal behavior. On the cause side of the equation, to the left, several potential seismic indicators have been proposed. These include primary waves, P waves, the earliest seismic vibrations that travel faster than destructive S waves, but are often imperceptible to humans. Animals, particularly those with important tactile sensitivity, such as dogs, rodents, and insects, might detect these minute tremors seconds or minutes before humans feel anything. Other proposed causes involve electromagnetic or magnetic field fluctuation, which some species are known to perceive for navigation. Earthquake-related stress in rocks could alter local electromagnetic activity, providing a signal detectable to birds, bees, or fish. Additional possibilities include air ionization created by friction or piezoelectric effects within stressed geological formations. Groundwater changes, such as changes in pressure or chemical composition, and gas emissions like radon release from fractured rocks. Each of these precursors could, in theory, provide an early environmental signal of seismic activity. So those are on the left, in the cause side. On the effect side, to the right, researchers have documented a wide variety of animal responses. These range from evident agitation and restlessness, such as incessant barking or pacing, to more dramatic behaviors like collective fleeing from nesting areas or burrows. In some cases, observers report increased activity, such as nocturnal animals appearing in daylight, while in others the opposite occurs, a sudden reduction in sightings, suggesting that animals retreat to safer or more concealed environments. There are even accounts of breeding behavior disruptions, with flocks of birds abandoning mating rituals and migrating unexpectedly. Such behaviors are often striking enough to capture human attention, which is why they tend to become part of earthquake folklore. Thus, the reasoning behind ethogeology follows a logical chain. If animals behave in unusual ways because of delicate, imperceptible environmental stimuli, then their actions could, in theory, serve as a form of natural prediction. This logic is appealing since, therefore, and as a result, animals might be viewed as a biological complement to technological seismic monitoring. Yet, for this reasoning to hold scientific weight, consistency and reliability are crucial. Unfortunately, these qualities are rarely observed. The major limitation is that few carefully controlled studies exist. Instead, much of the evidence comes from retrospective anecdotes collected after earthquakes have already struck. Because of this, researchers face a classic problem: separating legitimate cause-effect relationships from coincidental or unrelated observations. For instance, if a dog barked persistently the night before an earthquake, was it reacting to seismic precursors or to a passing predator, an approaching storm, or even a loud human disturbance? Without prospective documentation, observing animals systematically before and during seismic events, such questions remain unresolved. Moreover, foreshocks present another complicating factor. Small tremors, the soft movements, often precede larger earthquakes, and while humans might ignore or dismiss these subtle vibrations, animals could easily detect and respond to them. If so, the unusual animal behavior attributed to mysterious precursors might actually be explained by these minor, measurable quakes. This blurs the distinction between predictive behavior based on hidden signals and simple sensitivity to foreshocks already underway. Finally, human bias must be considered. Memory distortion after disasters often shapes interpretation. People are more likely to recall an animal acting strangely if a major event followed soon after, while forgetting countless instances when unusual behavior led to nothing. Psychologists call this information bias, the tendency to notice evidence that supports existing beliefs while ignoring contradictory data. As a result, even if genuine cause-effect links exist, they can easily become entangled with humans' perception, exaggeration, and selective reporting. In summary, interpreting cause and effect in ethogeology requires navigating a complex interplay of possible environmental precursors, diverse animal behaviors, and the confounding influence of human interpretation. While the idea that animals could function as living seismographs remain compelling, the lack of rigorous prospective and reproducible evidence prevents it from being accepted as a reliable predictive tool. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the scientific explanations, or the lack of them, and proposed mechanism. Let's take a look at the first one, sensing P waves. One plausible mechanism is P waves. This is primary seismic waves that arrive before the more destructive S waves because they travel faster. These P waves transmit through air, solid and liquid, so some sensitive animals may detect them before humans do. However, since seismographs reliably detect P waves, electronic early warning systems already harness this principle. Unfortunately, this provides warning only moments before the quake, hardly enough to evacuate large populations. In the picture, we have, in yellow, we have the P waves. That is when the Earth begins moving horizontally. If nothing else happens, most buildings resist this kind of movements. The terrible waves are the S waves. That is when buildings begin to jump in a way. So they go up and down, and that's when the most destruction takes place. Many times you can feel the horizontal movement, and many buildings can resist it, but the jumping S waves are really devastating. Okay, one more thing. Environmental precursors. Scientists have hypothesized that animals might sense changes in groundwater levels or gas emissions, for example, radon, released when Earth stress builds, magnetic or electromagnetic disturbances, especially ultra-low frequency waves, which could impact ionization or generate odors detectable by wild animals. Another aspect is the low frequency sound and infrasound. Earth's crust can emit ultra-low frequency sounds before rupture. Many animals, including elephants and certain bird species, can hear frequencies below the human range. Because these sounds may precede seismic rupture, therefore they could trigger agitation or migration in animals. Here in this picture, we can see the range of human hearing, and way below that, the infrasound only detected by some animals, as well as the ultrasound in the upper part. Okay, another change, electromagnetic changes. Rocks under extreme stress can release electrical charges, altering local electromagnetic fields. Magnetoreceptive species such as pigeons, the doves, and sea turtles may sense these changes. In some laboratory settings, electromagnetic fluctuations have caused observable behavioral changes in animals. And the last one, air ionization and other changes. Microfracturing of rock can ionize air molecules, producing odors like ozone-like smells or altering breathing comfort. If animals respond to this because of heightened olfactory sensitivity, their movement patterns could change accordingly. Okay, now let's take a look at the slide for segment 4, scientific investigations. Several modern studies have attempted to measure animal behavior quantitatively before earthquakes. In Italy, between the years 2016 and 2017, researchers at the Max Planck Institute and University of Constance conducted a control study in northern Italy, equipping cows, sheep, and dogs with movement sensors on an earthquake-prone farm. As we see in the pictures, we can see cows with sensors in their feet. During months of monitoring, significant spikes in animal activity were recorded only when animals were housed together in a stable and specifically before magnitude 3.8 tremors or higher. Notably, no spikes occurred when animals were grazing, that's eating outdoors, right? Eating the grass outdoors. This indicates that stress and proximity may amplify behavioral responses. So when these animals are together, they may feel even more nervous. In recent development, scientists, including the same Max Planck team, are deploying tiny transmitters aiming for satellite-based monitoring of thousands of animals. Early results, such as those from goats on Mount Etna, in the picture, a beautiful goat, suggest predictive reactions to volcanic activity and, by extension, potentially to earthquakes too, though mechanisms remain speculative. In Peru, in 2011, motion trigger cameras in Yanachaga National Park showed a drastic drop in animal sightings in the week before a magnitude 7.0 earthquake. The effect was most pronounced in the final 5 days. So animals disappear from this natural park. In California, toads in the picture were observed leaving breeding pools several days before a local quake. Male toads abandoned their sites 5 days prior, and the number of mating toads dropped to 0 3 days before the event. Researchers propose that ionospheric perturbations may have triggered this unusual behavior. In China, in different years, numerous anecdotal projects have attempted to correlate dog barking rates or fish movement with earthquake occurrence, but most lacked rigorous controls. A 2018 review examined 180 publications with over 700 records of unusual animal behavior across more than 130 species, ranging from insects to mammals, occurring from months to seconds before quakes. Yet only 14 time series studies were found, and most observations were anecdotal, retrospective, or lacking robust control. Statistical analysis suggests many behaviors may be tied to foreshocks, remember the soft tremors, not predictive precursors. Despite promising observations, cause-effect clarity remains elusive. In controlled environments, not all earthquakes elicit noticeable animal reactions, and not all animal reactions precede earthquakes. The U.S. Geological Survey remains unequivocal. No reliable earthquake prediction, animal-based or otherwise, has ever been demonstrated. Seismic forecasting remains probabilistic at best. Okay. Now, in this segment 5, skepticism and scientific limitations, here we see the website for the USGS, that's the United States Geological Survey. This USGS maintains that no scientifically proven method exists for earthquake prediction using animals. Several issues complicate validation. One, retrospective confirmation bias. Remember, people recall unusual behavior after an earthquake, and because of that, false positives go unrecorded. Two, multiple triggers. That is, multiple causes, multiple reasons why. Weather changes, predators, or human noise could cause the same reactions. Three, lack of baseline data. Without long-term continuous monitoring, it's impossible to distinguish earthquake-specific signals from normal variation. Thus, even if environmental changes cause certain behaviors, therefore, consistent prediction remains unproven. Okay, let's talk about technological integration. Modern earthquake early warning systems rely on seismometers in the picture on the right, GPS data through satellites on the left, and communication networks. Some researchers envision augmenting these systems with biologging data. That's information from animals. Satellite-linked animal tags could continuously track movement, heart rate, or stress hormone levels. If anomalous patterns align consistently with seismic events, algorithms could incorporate them into multi-factor alerts. However, because current data sets are small and inconsistent, therefore animal-based EEWS, the early warning systems, remains experimental. Okay, let's talk about the ethometeorology. The interesting thing of the day, the ITOTD article, also references ethometeorology, animals sensing meteorological changes such as hurricanes or storms. Okay, so animals predicting not only earthquakes, but possibly other environmental changes. Examples include birds altering migration patterns before cyclones, frogs and toads changing vocal activity before heavy rain, so the changes. While both ethogeology and ethometeorology deal with cause-effect links between environmental precursors and animal behavior, neither has yet achieved reliable predictive power. Okay, so our conclusion and what we're going to take with us. Ethogeology remains an intriguing yet ultimately unproven concept, occupying the space between folklore, anecdotal observation, and emerging scientific inquiry. As the interesting thing of the day article emphasized, the subject is best approached with both curiosity and skepticism, two traits that lie at the heart of responsible science. On one hand, historical anecdotes from diverse cultures suggest that animals often display unusual behavior in the hours or days before earthquakes, hinting at the possibility of sensitivity to environmental signals that humans ignore. On the other hand, scientific investigation has yet to provide consistent, reproducible evidence that such behaviors represent a reliable predictive mechanism rather than coincidence or selective memory. Research to date offers a partial support, particularly in settings where animals can be closely monitored. Studies in controlled farm environments, for example, have sometimes recorded intensified agitation in livestock prior to seismic events. Remote wildlife monitoring, aided by camera traps and acoustic sensors, has also yielded intriguing findings, such as sudden changes in the activity patterns of birds or mammals before earthquakes. These data points suggest that the idea is not entirely without merit. Yet, reproducibility continues to be a major obstacle. Behaviors observed in one location or species often fail to appear in others under similar conditions. The lack of standardized methods for documenting and analyzing animal activity further complicates comparisons across studies. Looking forward, the future of ethogeology may depend less on anecdotal memory and more on technological innovation. Advances in biologging, remember that's the information collected from animals, biologging tools such as GPS collars, accelerometers, and heart rate monitors are increasingly capable of capturing fine-grained data of animal movements and physiology. When paired with robust seismic networks and machine learning algorithms, these data sets could allow researchers to detect correlations between environmental changes and animal responses in real time, rather than retrospectively. If such correlations prove consistent across multiple species and regions, ethogeology could evolve from a speculative concept into a valuable component of earthquake preparedness. However, until that point, it is important to keep expectations realistic. Animals may provide hints of seismic activity, but without rigorous evidence, their behavior should not be treated as a substitute for established monitoring systems. Earthquake prediction is already one of the most difficult challenges in geoscience, and attributing predictive power to animals without strong validation risks creating false confidence. Instead, ethogeology is best appreciated as a reminder of nature's complexity, the fact that countless organisms interact with the environment in ways we do not yet fully understand. It also highlights the gap between compelling stories which captivate human imagination and conclusive science which requires systematic proof. In the end, the point of view for ethogeology is dual. As a scientific hypothesis, it awaits careful testing with modern tools. As a cultural narrative, it continues to fascinate and inspire. Whether or not animals ever become part of earthquake early warning systems, the exploration of their possibly sensitivity emphasizes a broader lesson. Our planet still holds mysteries, and sometimes the key to understanding those lies in paying closer attention to the non-human lives around us. Okay, and that's it for this week. Thank you so much for joining me today on Tune In and Speak Up, the podcast from Universidad Militar Nueva Granada. Don't forget to share it with your classmates, friends, or fellow English learners. Remember that this season will continue exploring unusual but meaningful topics that show how language, history, and everyday life are deeply connected. If today's episode helped you learn something new or gave you a new perspective on culture and communication, then our mission is complete. If you'd like to share your thoughts, reflections, or feedback, we'd love to hear from you. Your ideas help us improve, and your voice helps shape future episodes. This podcast is for learners like you, curious, committed, and ready to take the next step. We'll be back next week with another topic that might surprise you, make you think, or spark a conversation in English. In the meantime, keep listening, keep practicing, and most of all, keep speaking up. Until next time. Leonardo, thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Lo que ocurre en la universidad, los acontecimientos y sus protagonistas están en UMNG Radio.
Desde la Universidad Militar Nueva Granada, en Bogotá, Colombia, transmite UMNG Radio. UMNG Radio. Una emisora alternativa, cultural e independiente. Desde la Universidad Militar Nueva Granada. Esta es UMNG Radio.